Let's get to our expert panel on this. Laura Jays, Ross Greenwood and Andrew Clennell. How is this budget going to be received?
Well, it's going to be, Tom, I think it's interesting on a number of levels. There's obviously another surplus coming in 23-24. That's quite obvious, a $1.1 billion deficit. That's predicated on things like iron ore going back from $105 to $60 a tonne. I mean, and coal from $264 to $140 a tonne. Bank your surplus right now. He can make up the mugs if he likes. He said his predecessors were humiliated over their forecasts. Well, it was actually Wayne Swan, his former boss, who was also humiliated because he kept promising surpluses and not delivering them. And there is something here for Jim Chalmers in delivering what his former boss could not. On debt, he made a big song and dance on Sunday Agenda and generally about getting down debt, which he also did there. OK, fair enough, they have a bit. They used to go on about $1 trillion debt. Look at these papers, 25-26. That's net debt. Gross debt, we got $1 trillion debt again. So there you go. He got us a year or two off. And from the budget forecast, it's only $10 or $20 billion off. Then there's migration. We know they're trying to address this as a political issue. 510,000 people in the last year on this. The budget said there'd be 315,000 in the next year. This says there'll be 375,000 over that year. Before it dips to 250 they're hoping for, that's down from the budget forecast of 250,000. So are they really making that big a change to net migration? It's going up before it comes down. And when it comes down, supposedly, I've got my doubts about those figures, it's only down to what the budget forecast. Well, 10,000 less than that. And then finally, I guess I've got to sum it up by saying politically, they'll probably get bashed for not having just one cost of living relief measure in there. Could it have hurt the budget situation or inflation that much? Economically, do they deserve to be criticised? And I think so, for not doing enough to cut government spending, something which can bring down inflation, Tom.
The other big question, Laura, in the politics of this, when you look at one of the big drivers of inflation, it's oil, or in other words, petrol prices. Economists will shudder at the thought of a fuel excise cut, but households will say, give it to us, please. What did you make of the decision not to go ahead with this, which, was hinted at? We heard no new major measures. Basically, there was nothing for cost of living here, really.
Yeah, and look, this is a budget update. There's nothing really remarkable in it. I don't think Jim Chalmers would be all that unhappy about seeing this budget update today make news headlines for the next 12 to 24 hours and then fade away. This is all about, the kind of the broader message here. He didn't go down that path of cutting fuel excise once again because the previous government did it. And I think that's, really the barefaced reason why he didn't do it. When you look at the numbers today, it's pretty clear that inflation is good for budget bottom lines. Look at the company tax receipts and the tax receipts. Employment still very high, but I thought what was perhaps most remarkable in that media conference, we haven't heard a lot from Jim Chalmers talking about the migration strategy. We heard a lot from Claire O'Neill. We know that strategy was delayed because of the High Court shambles, but Jim Chalmers, cautious in his language there, saying that he welcomes that there'll be 180,000 fewer migrants over the next couple of years. But then he went on to say, Tom, net overseas migration had come back faster than anyone anticipated. What do you mean anyone anticipated? Governments are in control of visas and visas are issued in that way. So an admission there that it did get out of control. He went on to say clamping down where there's an obvious need to do so. Economists, and I've had on my show for the last couple of months, has said migration is out of control and it's not filling those skills shortage gaps. So there was a massive mismatch there. So I'm glad Jim Chalmers did address it there. But back to that macro issue, Tom, and that is, Jim Chalmers wanting to set himself up and this Labor Party up as responsible economic managers. In terms of a political fight, and what we're going to see after this is not all that much for the government to the opposition to sink its teeth into. You know, what the states have already pointed out to me this morning is when it comes to reprioritisation, well, a lot of those savings have been made by not going ahead with these infrastructure, big infrastructure spends. And we know how happy or unhappy the states are with that. So perhaps the bigger fight will come with the Labor states.